are learning the laws of Kiddush, and we mentioned that the way that it works, basically you make Kiddush on wine. But then we have another factor, that there's a hierarchy. You do it on wine. Number one is wine. Number two is bread. And then number three, we can talk about other drinks. Now on Friday night, you never get to three. Because if you're not doing it on wine, you do it on bread. That's all there is to talk about. But wine is preferable. During the day, the order changes a little. And that's because during the day, Kiddush is a key affair. As you mentioned, even though we have all the verses of Vaychulu and Vashamru, that is really just verses that are added. That's really just a minhag. There's no true halachic essentialness to those verses. And if you would just say Baruch Atah Hashem B'rei Piragafen, that would also be fine. So therefore, you can't make Kiddush Shabbat day on bread, because then you've just got a regular meal. You haven't actually done Kiddush. You've just said what's inside your meal. You need to say a bracha on some drink, some important drink, before the meal. That's the Kiddush. So then the order changes. First, wine. Secondly, Chamar Medina, other drinks, other honorable drinks. And thirdly, bread. So that explains the change in order between the night and the day, as we saw. And that's based on the Rosh, says the Shulchan Aruch. Now, the wine is again preferable over bread, talking Friday night, to the extent that if you don't have any wine in the city, then make it on bread. But if you have wine in the city, you should not make it on bread, you should make it on wine. What if you yourself won't drink wine? Then what you do is you give the wine to somebody else. The same as we do with the kids on a Friday night. Right? That same kind of idea. You make Kiddush on wine, but you can't drink it because you're not eating there. So you give it to the kids to drink. But share at your meal, let's say, give you a practical example. They give the example, the Shulchan Aruch gives the example of somebody took a vow not to drink wine. I would say it's not so practical. Who takes vows not to drink wine? What I would say is somebody who's an alcoholic. He's an alcoholic, but he's just got wine. He hasn't got grape juice. So then what should he do? He shouldn't drink the wine. Make Kiddush on the wine and get someone else to drink the wine. Or, obviously, get someone else to make Kiddush. But it's perfectly acceptable that he would make Kiddush and get somebody else to drink the wine. And that is preferred to making Kiddush on bread. So you really make Kiddush on bread only when the wine is not an option at all. But we always try to make the wine an option first. Next thing is, when we have Kiddush over wine, so we say Borei Piragafen. And anyone who drinks from that wine has fulfilled the obligation of Borei Piragafen. Then you have bread and this and that, whatever. And then somebody brings out another nice bottle of wine. Do you say, God bless you, sorry. Do you say, God bless, do you say a new Borei Piragafen? Or does your old Borei Piragafen still cover you? In other words, does the Borei Piragafen from Kiddush, that was before the meal, still cover you? And therefore you don't need to make a new bracha? Or does your bracha from before, not fulfill your obligation, and now you need to make a new bracha? What's the answer? You need a new bracha or you don't need a new bracha? Correct. You do not need a new bracha. Provided that you had the wine of Kiddush, you do not need a new bracha during the meal. Where this would come out is if you didn't have the wine during Kiddush, you do need a new bracha during the meal. And coming back to the German custom that we discussed in the past, so let's imagine a situation where everyone goes and washes, except the one making Kiddush. He makes Kiddush and he drinks the wine. Then he goes to wash and he makes some motzi. And then everyone's going to drink some, and then everyone has a piece of bread. And then people are going to have some wine. They will all have to say, Borei Piragafen, because they haven't had a Borei Piragafen yet. Right? So you only are exempt from your bracha of wine in the meal if you had at Kiddush. Is everyone happy with that?
They have no obligation to have wine.
You don't have an obligation to have wine. Don't. But if you're going to have wine, you have obligations to have bracha. And remember, wine is one of the exceptions. Even though almost everything that you have during the meal, you don't need to say a new bracha on, because Amotzi covers it. Wine is one of the exceptions. Wine, you will say a new bracha. However, here you've already said your Borei Piragafen, so you don't, unless you haven't fulfilled your Borei Piragafen, in which case you will have to say. Now, the question is, let's say I have wine at Kiddush. Then we wash, make hamotzi. Then I have some more wine during the meal. Then we're going to Birkat Hamazon, we're benching at the end of the meal. Must I also say a bracha for the wine? Or is that covered in Birkat Hamazon?
Wine right at the end.
Must I say, yeah, Birkat Hamazon and Al HaGefen Val Pri HaGefen? Or is just Birkat Hamazon good enough?
Say the bracha again.
Try again?
Don't say that.
No, that's right. Yeah, you don't say that other bracha. Birkat Hamazon covers it all. Birkat Hamazon is the all-inclusive bracha. There's nothing that's excluded from Birkat Hamazon. In fact, even if you had no wine during the meal, you had your wine for Kiddush, then you washed it and had your meal, and then at the end you said Birkat Hamazon, that also covers your wine from before the meal. Even Hamazon not only covers the wine during the meal, it even covers the wine before the meal. So that's the idea. Your bracha on wine before the meal covers all the wine, even during the meal. Your bracha on bread after the meal covers everything during the meal, and even the wine during the meal, and even the wine before the meal. Good. Any questions on that before we go further?
Is that, what is that other one called? The one right at the end?
The one right there is called Birkat Hamazon,
Is it a much
or
longer?
benching. Yeah, that's the long one. That's the grace after meals. Good. Chapter 273. Now this is an important one. That the Kiddush, the way they put this in halacha, is that the Kiddush must be in the place of a meal. But the way that I would put this is that accompanied by a meal. That's really how I would phrase it. And that to me makes more sense because you get a better sense of the halacha. If you have Kiddush without a meal, you haven't had Kiddush. That's the point over here. There's no such thing as just having Kiddush. You either have Kiddush with a meal or you don't have Kiddush.
But in shul, we just have Kiddush.
So that's why when you come home from shul, you still need to make Kiddush. For exactly that reason.
And isn't it invalid then?
Yes. The Kiddush that we make in shul is invalid. Which is why we have to make it when we get home.
So why do we do it?
So we do it because, and what's the Yiddish? Amalek Yorin. Right? And Amalek Yorin, back in the day, people used to have dinner in shul. After everyone would go, the wayfarers would stay in the shul and they'd have their dinner. And then the Kiddush in shul was accompanied by a meal. So that was the way that they used to do it. It used to be a valid Kiddush because it was accompanied by a meal. Nowadays, it's not accompanied by a meal. So it's not a valid Kiddush. So why do we do it? Sorry?
Aren't we saying brachot in vain?
We're not, because that's still the minhag.
What's minhag?
Custom. We have a principle that you can say brachot even over, which not everyone agrees to, but I'll give you the example. Hallel on Rosh Chodesh is a minhag. Hallel on Rosh Chodesh is not from the Torah, it's not from the rabbis. It's a custom to say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. And what do we say before we say Hallel? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likrot Hallel. Sfaradim don't say the bracha on Kaddish on Rosh Chodesh, on Hallel on Rosh Chodesh for that reason, okay, which we understand.
And they don't have Kiddush.
And they don't have Kiddush on Friday night. I told my students at Phyllis Joel, I said, if you see different customs, if you want to know which one is the more logical one, generally put your money on the Sephardi customs. Generally, the Sephardi customs are more logical. Not always, but generally. We see these are two good examples, right? So Ashkenazim, we make Kiddush because that's what we always used to do. Is it a valid Kiddush? No, it's not a valid Kiddush. So that's why you have to make again when you go home.
So, does that come to the debate about halal on Yom Ha'atzmaut or not?
Does it come into the debate of halal on Yom Ha'atzmaut? It might do. I'm not sure. There's a lot written on that. I'm not okay with all of it. I haven't seen that being brought in, but I haven't researched it properly.
So, Rabbi, is that why? Because, if you go to someone's house on a Friday night, then they'll just say Kiddush. But then, if you go to someone's house on a Saturday for lunch, then they'll often ask, "Have you heard Kiddush before?"
Exactly.
But they don't ask that on Friday night.
That's
because
right.
The Friday night Kiddush is not valid.
That's not a Kiddush. Exactly.
Oh, right.
The Kiddush you hear at the bracha is going to be a valid Kiddush because you hear Kiddush and you eat food. You eat a meal. We're going to see what defines a meal in a little while, but you say Kiddush and you eat a meal. So that is going to be valid. However, there are times when people didn't come to shul, they came straight home or whatever it was, So they go straight home, then they haven't heard Kiddush. No, that's why you need Kiddush. So Kiddush is only valid when it's accompanied by a meal. Then the first point that the Shulchan Aruch goes into dealing with is, what do we mean by accompanied by a meal? So let's say that right, Amnon and us live quite close to one another. So we coming home from shul. Amnon says, "Oh, I forgot we don't have wine." Amnon invited us all over to them for dinner. Amnon says, "Oh, I forgot we didn't have wine." In fact, he didn't even invite us. Moses were all at shul. But Amnon says to me, "I forgot we don't have wine." I said, "No, it's no problem. Come to us. We'll make kiddush together. I know you've got supper waiting for you. We'll make kiddush at my house. And then you go home and you eat your meal at your house." Does that count? Is that considered kiddush accompanied by a meal or not?
Yes.
No. Let's try that. No, it isn't. Why? Because it's in two different places. Said kiddush here, and I ate over there. It's got to be accompanied with a meal. Kiddush together with the meal. Think of it in a sense that the kiddush is sanctifying the meal. Think of it that way. I'm not saying it's exactly what it's doing, but it's a helpful mindset to have to understand these halachot.
But accompanied, does accompanied mean like right next door? I mean,
So that's the exact question. So how much does it have to be? So halacha says, if it's in the same room, certainly it's okay. Even if it's a really, really big room. Let's imagine you have one of those huge halls. Or, give you a great example,
same building.
same building, not necessarily.
You must see one another.
Well, no, let's say the same room. The same room would be, even if you can't necessarily see one another. But the example would be like this. Let's say you're at a really big function, huge dinner on a Friday night, and everyone's making kiddush at their own table. You make kiddush at your table, and then somebody comes along to you and says, "Excuse me, you've made a mix-up with the tables. You're actually sitting the other side." So I'm sorry, you go over, you sit at the other side. Now you're going to make hamotzi on this side, but you make kiddush on that side. Does that work? Yes, because that's the same room. The same room, it works even if you're going quite far across the room. That's considered accompanied by the meal. However, what if it's from one room to another? So then he says, some say that as long as you can see it, then that's fine. Okay, so that's where it would come from. The example here would be, I make kiddush in the kitchen, I'm going to eat in the dining room. It's two different rooms now. It's even a mezuzah on the door in between, whatever we can see through. So that's still considered that the kiddush accompanies the meal. And some say that if I ate in this room and I had in mind to eat in another room, even if I can't see it, then that's fine. Some say that. But everyone agrees that it doesn't work if you're talking from one building to a different building. If you leave, like in Amnon's case, right, where he comes kiddush and me and then goes home to eat, no, it doesn't work. What he could do is, he could make kiddush with me, make hamotzi with me, eat a little bit of food, bench, bir kalamazon, then go home. If he wants to have a second supper at home, he's welcome to. He's already fulfilled his obligation of kiddush. That would be a way to do it.
When I asked in the same building, you almost like had a question.
Yes, so in the same building, it's not so simple. If you always had in mind that I'd go from this floor to that floor, some say that that's okay in the same building. And if you can see where it is, then it's probably fine. But from one floor to another, some say it's okay if you always had that in mind. But if you had in mind you're going to eat in this room, and then you end up eating in a different room, probably that's no good.
So in other words, the same thing is if you've got a building like this and you've got almost like a tunnel, like an attachment between the two buildings,
Yes.
probably that same logic would apply, no?
Yeah, so you have to look in each case. I'll give you an example that happened to me a few years ago. B'nai Akiva camp. You've got the two dining rooms separated by the kitchen. So you've got, that's like a U shape. You've got the kitchen in the middle, and then you've got the two dining rooms on each side, and you've got a pathway in between. So somebody came to me, and he says, I made kiddush in that dining room, and I was planning to eat in that dining room, but now my brother invited me to come and eat in his dining room. I haven't made hamotzi. Can I actually go and make hamotzi and eat in that dining room, or must I stay in this dining room? Exactly. So there you would say, well, you can see from one to the other. And it does kind of all go under the one roof. So there I think that would be all right.
We did this with that laws, what constitutes a meal.
On benching.
Yes.
Remember, yeah.
Benching has got
Same
the
on
same
benching.
Yes, that's right.
If you
That's
can
right.
see the one,
Yes,
if
correct.
the door's open,
Yes,
you can see through
very
it.
good. That's right. That is correct. Good. Now, the Ramah says something very interesting. you need to eat in the place of Kiddush, la'altar. La'altar means immediately. Now, I'll tell you where this comes up very relevant, is at the Shabbos Bracha. So what you see, some people, they heard Kiddush, Barai Paragafen, and they grab at some biscuits to eat, right? So they shove people out of but they go straight through to get the biscuits or a piece of cake or some mizonot, right? Because it says you have to begin your meal, you have to start eating immediately. So they say immediately, they won't even talk until they get there. Now I've seen that and I still see that. I mean, I know that there are a few people at our bracha that won't say anything, they won't talk until they've had some mizonot because they want to go from Kiddush to the meal immediately. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. And the Mishna Brura goes even further. Lo yafsik afilu zman katzar. Don't interrupt even with a short amount of time. So, right? Go straight. There's no room for delay. What some people you'll even see if you look around, you'll see some people will dafka go and get a biscuit or a cracker or something, so that they've got it in their hands so they can do it immediately. And there are opinions over here that they quote what they've got in the Dirshu notes. They say, look, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't mean it doesn't say what you mean. Don't even wait a short amount of time. What does that mean? So they quote from the Siddur Yavetz that that's enough time to walk 11 meters. How long does it take you to walk 11 meters? 10 seconds? 15 seconds?
Is that amputee or non-amputee? Right?
It's talking a non-amputee, let's say. But it could be a subjective measurement there. But, yeah, let's say 10 seconds, right? Walk 11 meters. Talking 10 to 15 seconds. It's mamash not a lot of time. However, they quote as well, others say that just don't lose track of the fact that you have to go from Kiddush to the meal. Right? And if I recall correctly, that was what Chief Rabbi Goldstein taught us in Yeshiva. So he said, don't be like neurotic about it. Don't feel that, well, now I've heard Kiddush, I need to immediately, take the biscuit. Even though you could read the Shulchan Aruch that way, and you could read the Mishnah Berurah that way. But what they mean is, don't then go and leave and chat to your friends, whatever else, and come back 20 minutes later. Do it within the next few minutes. Right? Give yourself 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, have some mizonot, right, that you're having a meal together with the Kiddush.
Rabbi, sometimes at the bracha it gets very overwhelming.
Yes.
And everyone storms for the table.
Yes.
And then I kind of stand back.
Yes.
And let people storm.
Yes.
But then you start chatting with your friend.
That's your
by
mistake.
the time you
Yeah.
get to the back, then there's like, oh no, now there's not so much left.
Yes.
So that would be a problem, right?
Well, what a friend of mine says, he always tells his children, right? It's better to lose out on the cheesecake than to lose out on good character traits, right?
That's nice.
Don't push through. Don't get involved in the shoving match. We've all, thank God, none of us are in a position where we're going to go starving if we don't eat at the bracha. So I wouldn't worry about that. What I would say is, but don't get distracted with chatting to your friends. You can say how's it or whatever else, but keep in mind that you do need to link the meal to the Kiddush, otherwise you have a Kiddush.
Rather than complaining about people storming, which is how praiseworthy is the community that that's so diligent to eat.
That's right. That's very good. That's excellent. You and Rav Levi Yitzchak over this year. Wonderful, Evan. Wonderful. So I can just tell you, when I first came, we had to work much harder at the bracha than we do now, because that's when you're meeting people, talking to people, and finding out about them, whatever else. I mean, that was really, nowadays it's like more relaxed. We kind of know everybody already. We can chat to everybody. But then it was like quite very often we could both go for the whole Kiddush without having anything to eat. So there would be many Shabbatot, probably 50% of Shabbatot. We would come home, and Aviva would say, look, I heard Kiddush, but I didn't eat anything. So we would make Kiddush again at home, right? Even though she was there. Now, I never did that because, I like people, but not that much. And I'm just joking. Because I always wanted to make sure that I could say the after bracha. But that's a good example, right? Where you're so busy talking to your friends, whatever else, you never end up eating from the bracha. So then you missed your Kiddush.
Can you not just eat a piece of kitkah?
You can.
What do they define by food?
Good. That's a great question. Good. We haven't got there yet. We're coming to that in a little while. We're going to see that. That's the right question. Okay, and then he says, and you need to have in mind that you're going to eat there. Okay, but what if you thought to yourself, I'm not going to eat at this kiddush? So give you the example. You davened here because you wanted to hear the laning, right, of whoever was laning, but really you're going to the bracha or samach. You don't want to. You were chatting to your friend and you ended up staying for kiddush, but you never had in mind that you would eat at the bracha because you're going to go to your friend. You're going to go to the kiddush or samach. You got some friends there you want to meet. So you hear the kiddush, you're turning around to go, and somebody says there's samosas. They say, hold on a second. Maybe I shouldn't go to the bracha or samach. I want to eat here. So there he says, if you had in mind you weren't going to eat here, and then you changed your mind and you did want to eat here, that's fine. No problem. You all thought I was going to say it's no good. It's absolutely fine. There's no problem. If you heard the kiddush at any point, as long as we're still within, I'm going to call it 5 minutes, right? As long as you're still within the relatively soon time period, you want to eat something, make that where you have your meal. That's absolutely fine. Good. Next halacha, number 4. You're allowed. A person is allowed to make kiddush for others, even if he's not going to eat with them. Because for them, it is where they're going to be eating. It is going to be accompanied by a meal. Even though I can't say Brura Gafen for others if I'm not going to be drinking it myself. Since this Brura Gafen is linked to the Kiddush, Kiddush Hayom Dami, it's like Kiddush, and you're able to fulfill the obligation even though you're not going to drink. In other words, case goes like this. I'm trying to think who told me a story that I remember hearing it, that there was a community like this, that people in the community did not know how to make kiddush. And the only one who knew how to make kiddush was the rabbi. And so what the rabbi did was he went from home to home. It was like 10 different homes. Probably wasn't such a big area. But he went from home to home, made kiddush for this family, went on, made kiddush for the next family, made kiddush for the next family, made kiddush for the next family. You didn't have to drink any of that wine. Because the general rule is like this. You can say a bracha for someone else's mitzvah, even if you're not doing the mitzvah. But you can only say a bracha for someone else's food if you're eating that food. So Amnon and I sit down to eat apples. Amnon says, I don't know how to say the bracha on this apple. So I can say Brura eats for both of us because I'm also eating the apple. But if only Amnon wants to eat the apple, I can't say the bracha for him. But if Amnon wants to put on tefillin and he doesn't know the bracha and I've already put on tefillin, so I can still say the bracha for him right now. Or mezuzah. Another very practical example. Sometimes people invite me around to put up mezuzot for them. So I'll show them where it goes. And, we'll line it up and whatever. I'll say to them, you put on the mezuzah. It's your house, a nice thing. And you say the bracha. Sometimes they're very uncomfortable with the bracha, even if you get in the siddur or whatever. So I say, okay, I'll say the bracha. You put up the mezuzah. That also works. Even though I'm not putting up the mezuzah, that's still a valid way to do it. So how do we view it with Kiddush? Even though you could say in Kiddush there's 2 components. There's the Asher Kiddushan versus Havrat Savanu, the bracha of the mitzvah of Shabbat, and there's a Brura Gafen, which is a bracha of food and drink. They both have the status of the bracha of a mitzvah. And therefore you can say it for someone else, even if you're not going to be drinking.
But isn't the Saturday the lunch bracha is just gaffing? Brura gaffing?
Yeah, so would that work for Shabbos lunch? That's a good question. We're talking here mostly about the Friday night, but that's we'll see that in a little while. I'm not sure. I have to see that in a little while. Yes, dear.
Rabbi, but you can just do that. You start the bracha, and the other guy repeats after you.
Yeah, you could do that, but some people don't like that, or they say, but Rabbi, I want you to say the bracha. Right? So, okay, say it. When you say the bracha, it's fine. Halachically, it's fine.
Does that count even if the people aren't interested in what you're doing? And if you just went to somebody's house,
yeah,
eating lunch, and you said the bracha, because they're just completely not interested.
Yes.
It does.
It's a good question. The rule is generally we say mitzvot tzrichot kavanah. You need to have intention for the mitzvah. What degree of intention for the mitzvah is a matter of discussion. If you have negative intention, if you say, I don't want to fulfill the mitzvah, then certainly you don't.
But if
Right.
people are just like eating in a canteen or something,
Yeah.
can you say brachas like on their behalf just to?
Stand up and make kiddush for them? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
Say,
Interesting
guys,
question.
I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, pay attention for a minute. Yeah, people probably would.
Take a second.
You're talking about Shabbos Kiddush? I think people would. People would generally be quite open to that. So the Mishnah Brura says, even for lunch, when all you're saying is Brura Gafen, nevertheless, since that is a mitzvah and it was not done so that you'll enjoy a glass of wine. It was done so that you will fulfill the mitzvah of honoring Shabbat. So therefore, again, you can say that bracha for somebody, even if you're not drinking the wine at all. And it's not like hamotzi. Because when it comes to hamotzi, it's about eating a meal. When it comes to kiddush, kiddush is about commemorating the day. So those are different. I can't say hamotzi for someone if I'm not going to be eating. But I can say, even at the lunch, even though it's only Brura Gafen, I still can say that for other people. Fascinating. That's still gonna work. If you're making kiddush on bread, so then you can say hamotzi for someone else, like we've seen. Okay. Now he says. Yeah, and that's what there are more. Actually, the Ramon himself points that out explicitly. Even in the kiddush of the day, even kiddush during the day, you're allowed to say Brura Gafen for somebody else. That's not just the Mishnah Brura. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, however, all of this is when they don't know how to do it, because if they don't know how to do it, so then we understand that you need to make kiddush for them. But if they know how to do it, then they should be doing it for themselves. Mishnah Brura says, look, this is an argument. There's an argument. There are those who say that whether they know or whether they don't know, you're able to do it for them. And it's ideal that if you're not going to be eating with them, whatever else, and they are able to make kiddush, so it's ideal they make it for themselves. But we will accept these other opinions that you can do it for them. Then he gives the example. He says there's a widowed woman who doesn't know how to say kiddush for herself. So she shouldn't go to her neighbor to hear kiddush and then come home, right? Because then she's not having kiddush accompanied by a meal. What she should do is she should ask somebody to come and make kiddush for her if she doesn't know how to. Ask somebody to come make kiddush for her and then go to their home.
Someone should invite her, Rabbi.
That would be the best. That would be the best
Yeah,
case. But let's say she's happy with her own company. It's not that she's lonely. Says nothing better. Quiet evening by myself, a good book, right? I just don't know how to make kiddush. So would you mind just coming around and making kiddush for me and then going? My father-in-law, I think it was when he was in yeshiva, there was I don't know if they were aunts of his or just like old ladies who knew him. There was a group of 3 or 4 old ladies who lived, I think, either together or they were friends with one another, and they had Pesach together, just a group of them. But they didn't know how to do the Pesach Seder. So they said, please come do the Seder for us. Don't have to stay the whole evening. Do the Seder for us, and he can go. So that's what he did. Right? So you have such cases. Okay, next halacha. He says, what does it mean? This was Devorah's question earlier. So what does it mean, a meal? That kiddush has to be accompanied with a meal. So we're going to see a couple of different things here. So he quotes the Gaonim. The Gaonim are the sages from like the 700s to the 1000s. Right? So that's shortly before the Rif and Rashi and the Rambam and all of that. The section before what we call the Rishonim were the Gaonim. So the Gaonim say, even if you just have a little bit to eat, or if you drink a cup of wine, that also fulfills the idea of the meal. However, this must be bread or wine, but not fruit. Bread or wine, but not fruit. The Mishnah Brura says, well, if wine works, then certainly mezonot works. because mezonot is more of a meal than wine. You know, if somebody says, well, if you ask somebody, what are you having for lunch? And he says wine, right? That's not a great, it's not a great answer. But if you say, what are you having for lunch? He says pasta, right? Crackers and cheese. That's an acceptable answer. And if he says a sandwich, right? Certainly that's an acceptable answer. But to say, what are you having for lunch? Strawberries, that's not an acceptable answer, right? So that's kind of your hierarchy. Strawberries, that's not considered a meal. Wine, fine, is considered a meal. Mezonot is certainly considered a meal. And bread is obviously considered a meal for the purposes of this kiddush. Now, what's interesting is the wine, for example, is considered a meal for the purposes of kiddush, but is not considered a meal for the purpose of a Shabbat meal. Now, I'll give you a case where this was very practical with us. Aviva was doing a CSO shift in winter. In winter, yes. So what that meant was she had to be ready and at shul and whatever else at a time before candle lighting time. Maybe it was even during summer. But she wasn't able to light candles at home because by the time you could light candles, she already had to be at shul. So what are we going to do? So we had a couple options. I could light candles at home, but I needed to be here for mincha. So that also didn't work out. So we're trying to come up with a solution. The solution we said is like this. She'll light candles at shul. But it doesn't work to light candles at shul because you have to light candles, we're going to have supper. So we said, well, we'll make kiddush at shul by the candlelight. Right? Then you're using your Shabbos candles, that's acceptable. But then we haven't got a meal to accompany the kiddush. Right? Like she swallowed she swallowed the fire. The spider to catch the fire. We wanted to light the candles, but then we needed kiddush for the candles. But then we needed a meal for the kiddush. Right? So what we did was, we brought a bottle of grape juice, lit the candles, before Shabbos, after shul, just stopped here, made kiddush. We each drank a glass of grape juice, said the bracha after drinking grape juice. Now we've had kiddush by candlelight. We've had a meal of wine to accompany the kiddush. And then we went home and had amotzi and supper at home.
Should have gone to someone else and buy their candles.
Should have gone to someone else and bought their... But this was a good solution.
What is mizanot? Is that carbohydrate?
Basically carbohydrates. It's the 5 grains. Wheat, rye, oats, barley, and spelt.
But couldn't you take a morsel of kitka with?
Yes, but a morsel wouldn't be good because you need two complete loaves. You need to make hamotzi for Friday night on 2 loaves. Now you could do that on 2 rolls.
If they too many kids.
Yeah, but I mean,
Too many kitkas, but then now we're going to sit there, make hamotzi, and then we're going to bench afterwards. It's much more practical just to have the wine. Yes, Devorah? Yeah, Evan?
This is the morning kiddush.
Yes.
You got no time to eat the kiddush bracha. You drink the wine.
Yes.
Does it count for the morning kiddush?
That would count for the morning kiddush as well.
That's why you didn't have a problem.
That's why I didn't have a problem. That's right. So you make kiddush, well, provided you have enough wine. Let's see if he does he explain over here how much wine. And then he says wine. He says other liquids don't count. Only wine. If you have a whole lot of Coke or something like that, that's no good.
You're going to be buzzing first thing in the morning.
Well, it might be a cheekful or something.
No,
Yeah.
you should take that whole glass.
So he says, look, he's not. The Mishna Brura says some say that wine doesn't really work, so wine's not ideal. Okay, I didn't know that at the time, a few months ago. He says wine's not ideal. If you haven't got other options, go with wine. If we would do it again, maybe next year we're going to have to do it again, or this year. If we would do it again, so probably I would bring some biscuits or something like that. Mezonot is a better option. But how much? So a morsel isn't quite enough. If it's food, it should be kazayit. And if it's wine, it should be revi'it. It's called that 90 mils. Right? Took 90 mils of wine or grape juice. Or you're talking 30 grams of kichel, or bread or something like that.
Can you eat between kiddush and hamotzi?
That's a good question. So what do you want to eat between kiddush and hamotzi?
Not bread.
Biscuits you wanted to bring.
Biscuits would be fine. See, the question would be, can you have kiddush and then have some kind of non-mezonot hors d'oeuvres? Right? I don't know, salmon. Kiddush, salmon, and then hamotzi.
Fish.
Yeah.
I don't even consider that a meal for some reason. Meat's a meal. Meat's a proper meal.
No, but who eats meat all the time, the halacha says? Can't eat meat, or you eat meat once a week.
Eats meats all the time.
I'm saying, I'm giving a musa.
You need meat, Trevor.
No, you definitely don't need meat.
After the gotta eat some meat.
No, you don't have to. Permitted to. But what does it say? It says that when when you're wealthy and you have and you have enough to satisfy you with bread, so you can have a little meat also. But the meat's not a meal. You don't eat a meal of meat. I mean, that was. I mean, halakha doesn't recognize that as an option. You have a meal of bread. Okay, good. Then, so now he says, here's an interesting one. Shabbat day, you're having a bris and shul. So you're having the bris and shul Shabbos day, and you have the wine over which you say the brachot. So what do you do with that? Can I drink the wine? Let's say the way that it works normally at a bris, right? So let's say I'll come after the bris and I'll take the glass of wine, say the Borei Bragafen and the bracha over the Brit Milah. So normally, because you've said the Borei Bragafen, you take a sip. Now, can I do that Shabbos day? Have I made kiddush?
Yeah. Torah mitzvah. The bris.
The bris is a Torah mitzvah, but the bracha afterwards with a cup of wine, that's not a Torah mitzvah anymore. That's a bracha. So can I drink from that wine? I haven't made kiddush. So the answer, says the Ramah, is that Borei Bragafen is the kiddush, and just make sure you drink 80, 90 mils of that glass. So in other words, normally you would just take a sip. But when it's a bris on Shabbos, you'll drink the substantial amount of that glass, so that you've had kiddush together with a meal. However, he says the custom is, that was what you could do, but the custom is, when we have a bris and shul Shabbos morning, is you give the cup of wine to a child. Same as we do on Friday night. Rather give the cup of wine to the child to drink. Has anyone been at a Shabbos bris?
No.
You actually give a cup of wine to a child?
Well, we do grape juice.
Oh.
Yeah.
But you don't have they got the same problems with the whole Friday night kiddush cup of wine to a kid.
Yes, but then we explained that. Yeah, exactly. It's the exact same scenario. It's the exact same scenario. Yeah.
Which was a bit unsatisfactory.
Yeah, it was that we want them to learn about Kiddush Friday night, but we don't need to teach them that you can't, that you need to have a meal, together with Kiddush. Yeah. Selective chinuch, for whatever reason. We said it's in a Magen Avraham where he explains that. Yeah. Now he says, if you made Kiddush at home and you heard your neighbor and your table is set out, you fulfill your obligation because that is considered in the place of the meal. In other words, my neighbor in the next door, are you guys in the Klitzens? Are you exactly next door neighbors or just kind of close? Yeah, okay. So let's imagine that you're right next door neighbors. So again, you've got your scenario, you've forgotten your wine again. So you say, Arvin, when you guys make Kiddush, say it really loudly, have us in mind as well. We're sitting there with our meal. They're making Kiddush from there, and we're hearing them from our house. So does that work? The answer is yes, because you heard the Kiddush here. It wasn't a case where you went to his house for Kiddush and then came to your house. You're at your house with your table of food. You're just hearing the Kiddush came from away, but you're hearing the Kiddush here. So your Kiddush is here. His Kiddush is there, but he's shouting loudly enough that you can hear. And then you go into your meal. That would be fine as well. Yeah. Yeah. Who was it who was telling us? Yes, the Bachmans told us once that they live right next door to the Shochetts. And there was non-Jewish neighbors who lived next to both of them. And it was Shabbos afternoon, and there was substantial singing going on at both homes. The neighbors called over to the one family. They said, the other ones are singing better than you guys. Welcome, keep it, you know. If you want to win the chocolate, you'll need to do better than that, they said. No, they didn't say that. Right. Okay, so that's the idea that even though the Kiddush doesn't have to be where you're standing, the Kiddush is where you're kind of, so to speak, receiving the Kiddush. That's where your meal's got to be.
I suppose like the shofar is also a hearing thing.
Yeah, you gotta hear.
Yes, yeah, but that's a good example.
You hear it from afar.
That's right. You're standing outside the shul on that side, you still hear the shofar. Yeah.
So it's in completely another building.
I think so, as long as you can hear it, yeah. And as long as they have in mind, for anyone who can hear it, and you have in mind that that's the mitzvah, yeah. Now he says, some say that you have to make Kiddush by the Shabbos candles, by the light of the Shabbos candles. And some say, no, Kiddush has got nothing to do with the Shabbos candles. And if you... Thank you, everybody. And if you find that you would rather be outside rather than inside, because maybe there's a nice breeze or there are flies inside that you want to get away from, so there you can go to the courtyard even though you don't see the Shabbos candles at all. Because the point of the Shabbos candles is to add enjoyment to Shabbos, not to make it difficult for yourself. And so that makes sense. Truth is, we've had this as well. Some, especially in the summer, whatever else, if we're just having a family Friday night, sometimes people will say, let's go eat on the balcony. Right? Don't eat inside, get in the balcony, but the candles are inside. It's fine. Make Kiddush outside. Truth is, we could do it even from inside because you can see the outside. But let's say, make Kiddush outside. You're going to have a moshe there, whatever else. Oh, but what about the candles? That's not such a big deal. You go eat your meal where you enjoy it more. Okay. If you planned already to, eat this, and maybe you can find a way that the candles can give light. But if you can't, at least you'll use the candles and you're carrying things in and out. Pardon. Okay. Chapter 274. The laws of making hamotzi on Shabbat. But say al shteki karot shleimot she'ochel shteim biyado v'tzaya ha'tachtona. You make kiddush you make hamotzi over 2 full loaves. Now, when we say 2 full loaves, it doesn't have to be like a giant loaf of challah, It just has to be a piece of bread that is complete as it was baked. So we're not talking about sliced bread. We're talking about some kind of loaf or roll. Little rolls, I've mentioned in my story in the past about the lady in the queue who wanted the challahs. So I got rolls. That's the same thing halachically. So little roll, whatever else. Or matzah is a loaf. Somebody, one of our guests brought almost little mini pittas, right, that they'd made. When I say mini, I mean they weren't, tiny. They were like that size pittas, right, and a little bit thick. So that's a loaf. Anything like that would be acceptable. And what you do is you hold both of them in your hand, and you're going to break the bottom one. So you put one on top of the other, and you make hamotzi, and you're going to cut the bottom one. The Ramah says that's on Shabbat night, but on Shabbat day or on Yom Tov night, then you're going to cut the top one. Why? Kabbalistic reasons. Okay.
What is the reason?
Kabbalistic. I'm not a Kabbalist. I can't. Mystical reasons. I'm not a mystic, so I can't answer. I can just tell you what it says in the halacha.
Maybe it's got something to do with heaven and earth, with when it's below and when it's above.
That sounds reasonable.
It is custom or halacha?
Is that custom or halacha?
Can't be halakha.
It's in Shulchan Aruch.
So then it's halacha.
No, but you don't do halakha from Kabbalah.
But I'm very tempted to say, like Amnon says, that we generally don't have halacha from Kabbalah. Sometimes we do, but generally don't. But, what kind of strength can it really have? It's not from the Gemara, it's not from the Torah, it's a Kabbalistic idea. Yeah, I think it would be hard to say that you have to do it this way.
Rabbi, another thing is, let's say you do that now on a Friday night, now back to Friday night.
Yes.
You see, done amotzi, you've taken the top one away, cutting the bottom one. Now you're checking a lot of people, small challah.
Yes.
That second one that you packed away,
Yeah.
good size.
Yeah.
Feed these people,
Yeah.
then that can go back into circulation.
Sure, absolutely.
But I've heard from some people, no, you can't, because you must put it away, because the portions that was given, the mana.
So the Mishnah Brura goes into that a little bit. That he says some people say that no, you cut both loaves of challah, and then some people are worried about. So then if you're going to cut both loaves of challah, then what are you going to do? Friday night, Shabbos day, so actually you're going to need 6 loaves of challah. So I'm saying, okay, so have 6 loaves of challah. There's certainly no problem with cutting both if you'd like to cut both. From what I can see, doesn't seem to be any.
Where does that 10 fingers come from?
That is a general rule of hamotzi, is that when you make hamotzi, anytime you make hamotzi, it's not a Shabbos thing, anytime you make hamotzi, you should put all 10 fingers on the bread. And the reason is that you remember there are 10 mitzvot related to the production of bread. That's in the general laws of the meal that we had a few chapters ago.
And Hamotzi left from has 10.
That has 10. I think that's connected to it as well.
I like that.
Yeah.
But what if you're having only a slice?
Yeah? What do you mean? You can't make hamotzi on a slice.
Only on a full bread.
Oh, you're saying during the day,
Yeah.
during the week. During the week. So you hold that slice in all 10 fingers. What's the problem?
It's already, everything's on top of it, you know.
You're having a peanut butter on toast. So you want to like balance it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do what's reasonable. Again, this is not one of the strict, it's not one of the strict mitzvot. It's a good to have. It's not a have to have, it's a good to have. So, okay, yes, Rabbi Goldfein would say, use your seichel, right? Apply your mind intelligently to these scenarios.
Okay, Robert, let's say you didn't have loaves.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
You're gone, you're in another place.
Yes.
But you do have 2 slices of bread.
Yes.
You can make hamotzi then.
So you can make hamotzi. Well, we haven't discussed what to do if you don't have. So we discussed what we do if you do have. What he does say is there's a discussion here about whether you could use. I mean, let's start with another question. Could you use cake?
Does it not? If it's a meal, yes.
Could you use cake? So he says that's a discussion. That's a discussion. He doesn't go into it here. We'd have to look at that section over there. I know with Sfaradim, they don't want to use cake. Sfaradim don't want to use cake. And therefore, Sfaradi challah is not as sweet as Ashkenazi challah. Ashkenazi, we put in all kinds of sugar and sometimes even make like chocolate challah and all that kind of thing. Sfaradim don't like to do that because then they say it's no longer bread, it's cake.
You still bench, don't you?
You would still bench, but they don't like that for the hamotzi. So I mean, they've got a point again, you know, because after all, what kind of flour do you use to make challah? Cake flour, and then you put in sugar and oil. I mean, it's like it's a cake recipe. It is cake. However, maybe you can use cake. That's not necessarily a problem. Okay, what if it's what if you don't have your full loaves? So the Mishnah Brura says if you don't have full loaves, so that doesn't stop you from going ahead and having your meal. You can't say, oh well, now I can't do it. He says, okay, as long as there's a kazayat, right? Again, like 30 grams, then that's all right.
Can you use the same loaf that you used for Friday night for Shabbos lunch?
Yes, you can. Now that's what he says. He says there are those who say you should cut both breads at every meal, but that's not. That's a custom that some have. That's not a requirement. You certainly could use. The straightforward explanation is the reason you have 2 loaves is because there were a double portion right, for Friday and Shabbos, but the idea was that you would have, you know, some for Friday night and then some of that for Shabbos day and then some. So the 2 loaves you're using, one's already for Friday night, one's for Shabbos day. I would say that's the simple meaning. So certainly that's acceptable halachically.
I've got a vague memory of going for Friday night in Massachusetts, and then they used 12 loaves. You heard of this?
12 loaves. Well,
Yeah,
what,
that's the temple.
that's what I would say. That would probably be a zeicher, a remembrance for the 12 loaves of the showbread in the temple. That custom. what I did, yeah, family of 12. What I did have this discussion with Danny Rabinovitz this week, because one of the theories that I've got, I might have mentioned it before, is why do we have platted bread for Friday night, for hamotzi on Friday night? Right, it's got this big thing like challah, kitka, platted bread. Where does that come from? So I've got my theory, which I haven't had anyone substantially agree with me, but I still think it's a good theory.
What is your theory?
I'll tell you in a minute. But Danny Rabinovitz told me his theory. He said no, he thinks that you plait each loaf with 6 plaits, and then it's in commemoration of the showbread. I said to him, that's all well and good, but who does 6 plaits to make challah, right? People do 3 or 4. So he says to me, no, he looked and he found it. I said, where did you find it? He said, on the internet. I said, come on. But I can also find stuff on the internet. That doesn't count. Tell me you said it. Not, so that was what he proposed. But that I think would be a similar kind of idea to what you're mentioning. My theory is, I'm putting 2 things together from what I learned in the laws of milk and meat. Generally speaking, bread has to be parov. Because you come home one day, you have a sandwich with cheese. You come home the next day, you have a sandwich with meat. So keep your bread parov, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. But sometimes you may decide to make milchik bread or fleishik bread. It is possible to do that. But then you have to make a sign that this is different bread. Don't get confused. That's one halacha. There's another halacha where the Ramah says, for Shabbos we make bread with schmaltz as an extra treat for Shabbos, and therefore we make that bread a little bit different, so that people can see that it's fleishik bread. But he doesn't say how they make it different. My proposal is, they made it different by making it platted bread, not regular bread, and then everyone knew that this was fleishik bread, don't have it with cheese. That's my theory. I think it's a great theory. I haven't had anybody agree with me, but, you know.
So when you say, is the bread more on the non-meat side or the meat side?
Well, normally it's neither. Normally it's neither. But what they used to do in Europe was they would make schmaltz, chicken fat, right? Put fat into the mixture, basically oil, but chicken fat, and then it would be meat. Exactly. So that's my proposal.
Oh, the Sfardim do that, they do, yeah.
I think everyone does. Yeah.
Sfardim was like those round things.
Only certain times of the year they have round ones.
The irony is, I think the non-kosher challah was made with milk. It's like everything.
That's
I
interesting.
was growing up, that was the case.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Also the plaits mean some interconnectedness of Jewish different.
Yeah, I'd say these are all modern reasons, you know, that once we've got the thing, let's try to find reasons for it. But why did we start it? That I'd be interested to know. So that's my theory. Could be wrong.
Easier to break off the pieces.
Yeah. Now let's just make a couple more points on this. So the one was, he says, before you make hamotzi for other people, you should start with saying, Bereshut Rabotai, with your permission, everyone. And he says that's a way of humility. Even if you're the balabait, even if it's your home, don't just say, I'm making hamotzi for me. Is it okay? Would you mind if I make hamotzi? That's good. Then he says as well, yeah, the Mishna Brura says, we mentioned this idea of having 2 challahs at each meal, so 6 challahs altogether. He says the general custom is like the Shulchan Aruch, that you don't have to eat both loaves at each meal, or cut both loaves at each meal.
Rabbi?
Sorry, I just want to make a couple more points maybe before questions. Sure. So now he wants to say as well that some want to say that as you're busy saying hamotzi, you switch it around. Because it's not nice that you've got this bread on top and then you just like discard it, right? There's nothing to say you do it that way. And he also says as well that you shouldn't cut the loaf until you've already made the bracha. Because if you cut it before, then it's not going to be complete anymore. What some people do is they just make a little mark on the bread. He says that's like a good thing to do. You make a little mark on the bread. Don't cut it properly. Make a little mark on the bread. Then you make hamotzi, and then you're going to cut it. Yeah, Mia.
My question. if you have like a lot of people, like 30 people, and now 2 halas, you think maybe 2 halas is going to be enough, but then as the thing goes around, now you realize, okay, 2 halas is not going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
So now you get another hala. You say hamotzi again over that hala as well?
No, not if it was in the home the whole time. If you had to go and get it out, could talk about it.
Okay.
But if it was in your home the whole time, you wouldn't have
So
to.
what happens if you take the bottom one, now you've got no more colours and you're only left with the top?
Yeah?
I thought you're only allowed to use the bottom.
No, you're allowed to use that one as well. You just start with the bottom one. You start with the bottom one.
Reason.
Yeah. You start with the bottom one.
And then is there any special way, for instance, if you have challah left over on Saturday night, challah is not so nice anymore, can you throw it away? Is there any special way you need to discard of the
There is a whole thing about respect for bread. Now, I don't have clarity on that. Sweeping up crumbs and not throwing them away, I don't have clarity with that. And the reason I don't have clarity on that is because our relationship with food is very different to what their relationship with food was. The basic example I always say is today, eating is a recreational activity. Never was like that in human history. Nobody had enough food for it to be a recreational activity. But yeah, you say, what do you want to do? Let's go eat something. Never used to be, right? So we have a very different relationship with food that impacts on all of this. But please God, we'll continue.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, of
You've got
course.
The 2 colours, we sometimes, if you notice just immediate family, you know,
Yes.
you get through one.
Yes.
Can that second one be frozen? Like you just take it out
Yes.
so it's not really edible at the time you're doing the bracha.
I hear what you're saying. In other words, it is already not. Can it be frozen after Shabbos? Can it be that I'm taking
out
a?
the freezer?
Yeah. I mean, it is edible. It's just it's cold and hard.
Yeah.
If you were hungry, you would eat it.
What about all that, like I noticed on Saturday night,
Yes.
they throw a lot of the kitka away.
I don't think they throw away.
Yes, like when there's
Oh, you're saying things that people took a bite out of and left on their plate. Yeah. So that's related to Mia's question.
that's right.
Yeah. Which I don't have a clear answer to. Good. Shkaf. Thank you.
For the home, I couldn't come up with
Sorry?
I couldn't come up with